Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now for those of you who don't know, nearly a year ago, JayEmm, with the help of Ant, made one of my dreams come true. They gifted me this beautiful 1995 Mercedes C124 E320 Coupé with the Carat du Châtelet body kit. Now you may ask why they gifted me this particular car. Well, one, because they're just two of my best friends and they are nice people and they knew I had an affinity with this thing and wanted to do something nice with me. And the other reason is because back in the day, the first car I ever drove was my dad's 1990 E300 or 300E, should I say, Mercedes W124 Saloon, and that had the Carat du Châtelet body kit. Now, since it's nearly been a year since I was gifted this car, I wanted to tell you what my experience of ownership has been like in that time. I want to tell you what it's cost me to run, what's gone wrong with it, what it's cost to fix, and what my plans are for it in the future, especially this upcoming year. Now, this car started life in the mid-80s up until about the mid-90s. And back in the day, this was one of their flagship models. You can tell that by the fact it's got the 3.2 litre straight six engine. It has got these beautiful pillarless windows, which I can't put down at the moment because I have a camera attached to one of them. And also the fact it has the silky smooth 4-speed gearbox. Combine that with the fact we've got a wonderful leather interior in here as well, and you are just in absolute 80s to 90s comfort and luxury. The Mercedes from this era made what I'd like to call austere luxury vehicle. Oh my God. Christ alive, MG driving get out in the middle of the road. Now, back in the mid-80s to 90s, Mercedes were known by the fact that they made absolute bomb-proof cars. And they were also quite luxurious, but in that austere German way, where perhaps you got everything you needed, but nothing more. But what you did have was absolute quality of the highest order. And that really does show inside this vehicle. This is the kind of vehicle that would have been expensive when it was new, and the kind of vehicle you bought if you were the person that wanted something to show off yourself, but perhaps in a very subtle way. Cars like this are interesting because they went from being a kind of like reserved status symbol to being a car that everybody kind of wanted to own and wanted to buy when they depreciated back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You know, these kind of cars went on for millions of miles as taxis as well, and they really did hit the bottom of the market and became quite, you know, commonplace vehicles. But nowadays, when you see one of these cars, they're just kind of unlike anything else on the road. No car is built to this level of quality, in my opinion, and built, you know, in the same level of luxury. Everything luxury nowadays is touch screens and over-the-top interior styling, Mansory glue on everything, and, you know, light packages inside, and star ceiling headliners. No. That's not what this car is about. And this example, I must say, is a true survivor. The previous owner of this car owned it for about 20 years. And the amount of money they put into it, when I've looked at the service stacker history, which is about this big, it's just unbelievable. If this car needed anything to be done to it, it was done. Regardless of the cost, regardless of the vehicle's value, this is probably one of, you know, the nicest examples because it's been so well cared for. So let's talk about running costs. How much would it cost you to run an old Mercedes like this? Well, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you're the kind of person that works on your car yourself, or you've got a garage that knows them, perhaps a specialist or something like that, yeah, there's going to be labour cost, but the part costs aren't too bad. And a lot of the parts you can still actually get directly through the main dealer or for reputable aftermarket suppliers. A service on this is going to be about £250 a part, maybe, for an absolutely full service on it. And when I've looked online, a lot of other general parts don't seem to be massively expensive. And of course, there are so many of these cars made that there's still quite a lot of spares out there for them. Tax and insurance on a vehicle like this? Well, tax is in that kind of classic car pre-2001 band, and I think at the moment it's about £360. Insurance for me, in my mid-30s, you know, on about 6,000 miles a year on this car, because I don't do full mileage on it. I don't do loads of long journeys. About £350. Not too expensive at all. Fuel costs might be one of the things that actually ends up turning some people away, because even though in the time that this vehicle was made, Mercedes made a massive thing about fuel efficiency. And when you think back, actually, a lot of vehicles kind of pre this production did just burn a lot of fuel in general. It's one of the reasons they have asymmetrical mirrors. It's all about drag coefficient and things like that. Oh my goodness, I didn't see that. That's an old Metro. Wow, that looks beautiful. Metro distraction aside, for the time, they actually weren't too bad on fuel. But nowadays, when you look at it, they're not the best, especially with the 4-speed gearbox that this has in the automatic guise. Around town, I get anywhere between 16 and 18 miles per gallon, I would say. I get an average combined through, you know, going further afield in town on my usual drive of about 22 to 24 miles per gallon. And on longer journeys, you can eat, depending on how fast you go, anywhere between 26 and probably 28 miles per gallon out of it if you really tried. But a classic car like this is something you certainly wouldn't drive every day. I know that I don't, so I don't really worry about the fuel costs, especially as my daily driver is actually just a cheap little electric car runabout, and that's really cheap to run, and that offsets the costs of having this thing on the weekend and in the summer and the fun times. But if you don't mind the costs, what's this thing actually like to daily drive? Well, I tell you what, the comfort is just phenomenal in here. These seats back in the day were made to be kind of very ergonomic, and I have to say you can pull long distance drives in this without any issues whatsoever. In fact, our channel co-host James actually drove this to Le Mans last year, and that was a 1,000-mile round trip. James was saying he couldn't have thought of, at the time, a better car in his fleet or mine or anything like that that he would have wanted to do the trip in. I myself have done a couple of longer trips on this. Me and my wife took this away. We went on holiday in North Norfolk, and we spent a few days there. And I tell you what, getting up there, getting back, driving around, this was in August time, having those windows down, having the music playing, oh my goodness, what an experience that was. Obviously it is a little bit long, so parking in some parking spaces can be a bit of a pain, but you know, generally it's not too bad. The width on this is actually pretty decent. It's not too wide. I can almost touch the door card from here. In fact, I'm touching it now in this position, touch the door card on the passenger side, but you still have a lot of space between you and your passenger. That's just cars designed in the 80s and 90s. There weren't quite as much A-pillars and crash structures and things like that, but you know, I don't mind. It's a cruiser. I'm not going fast enough to have a crash anyway, let's be honest. And that is mainly because of the way the car makes you drive. Yes, the response to the automatic gearbox is a little bit lazy, but it is kind of an effortless engine. The engine and the torque and the way it goes down the road is really quite nice. And you don't want to drive it like a lunatic, because it's not even, you're going to love this. This car has got Sportline suspension, it's got sportier springs, a Sportline steering box, and all the sporty upgrade. Yeah, no rack and pinion in this, by the way. Old school steering box, which is a bit numb. And I wouldn't have even known. I would have had no idea that it had the sporty bits on. Even with these 18-inch AMG monoblock wheels on there, it's still not a great sporty handler. But you'll be surprised actually what you can do when you throw this thing down a back road. So what's this car actually like when you put the gearbox into second and make it hold and put your foot down? Wow. Well, I tell you what, when you put your foot down in this thing, it's actually not too bad. It's just quite funny throwing this car into corners like that when it's got seats that are designed for comfort, because you do move around in them a little bit. But the engine in this is really smooth. It's about 220 horsepower, which is actually enough to get this thing moving more than you think you would be able to. It's got variable valve timing as well, so above about 3,500, 4,000 RPM, it actually wakes up a little bit and gives you a little bit of a shove. No, it doesn't feel like it's supercar fast, but it's got more than enough performance to get this thing into a corner. Even though there's not a lot of feel in the steering, you're actually surprised once you've finished leaning in your seat just how well it does grip. Big corner, drop it down in a second, come out, then put your foot down and oh yeah. Bring that back in, set yourself up for the corner and put your foot back down and oh yeah. It's pleasant. Obviously, I don't normally drive this car like that in the slightest. It's quite funny to do that actually, because it's just not how the car wants to be driven. It can be, but it's not how I drive it. I just cruise. That's what I like to do. I think the way you describe this car is you make progress at a slightly less than leisurely pace when you need to. Yes, you can overtake things, and if you're sitting on a motorway or something like that, you could get up to license losing speeds quite easily, but the car would still feel very stable. We spoke about how reliable these cars are generally meant to be, but it's a 31-year-old car now, and any old vehicle will have things that need to be sorted and will have things that will go wrong with them. So in the time I've owned this car, what has gone wrong with it? Well, just before I got the car, James had this taken down to a specialist and they fixed a bunch of things on it. It had the wiper motor rebuilt and the linkages, all that rebuilt, and it needed a new vacuum pump. Now, a lot of things in this car are actually controlled via vacuum. The door locks are controlled by vacuum, the headrest system is controlled by vacuum, and even how the seats latch into place when you pull them forward and backwards to let people get into them, it's all controlled by vacuum. So that was something that needed to be repaired, and that was done. And I think the bill that James had out of there by the time they'd done the MOT and by the time they'd done the little fixes and given it an oil change was about £1,200 or so. So that's a kind of idea of a rough cost, you know, but these aren't things that are going to need to be done all the time and break all the time, really. However, the wiper motor, annoyingly, has stopped working properly again. When I came back from holiday in August, it did play up on me and it was getting stuck in place. I also contacted the people that rebuilt the wiper system, and they were very disinterested in actually looking at it under any kind of warranty work, and they charged a lot of money for that. So unfortunately, I won't be going to that specialist again, I don't think. I'm not going to name and shame because technically they did nothing wrong, but it's the fact that they wanted to charge me again to actually have a look at it that left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And to be honest, it's actually not a massively expensive part. The thing which was slightly annoying is for the price they charged to rebuild, they could have actually got a new mechanism and motor completely and replaced it. Why didn't they just do that? Other than that, the car has actually been totally and utterly faultless. It's been really reliable. When I first got it, there was a little bit of time where it was a bit funny starting. Sometimes it would take a while to crank over in the mornings, but I don't know if that was just the fact it had been sitting for a while, or the ECU needed retraining, or, you know, maybe some of the old fuel was still in the system. But that hasn't happened since. It's been absolutely fine. I haven't had that issue again. And the other thing that went wrong is I have a bulb blown for the light switch. Yeah, that's it. The light switch on the dash which turns your light on, there is no rear illumination because the bulb is blown. I mean, what can I say? It's been great. What I do have planned for this is a full service. I know this had the oil changed, but this needs a coolant flush, this needs a brake fluid flush, it needs a set of tyres on it as well, which I have got, thanks to the lovely people at Hankook for providing those for us, which was a Christmas gift to me from James and the team at Hankook. So once again, thank you very much for that. But yeah, those tyres have got to go on. I want to change the transmission fluid, I want to change the differential fluid, and just, you know, change air filters, change any cabin filters. I'm not sure if this has a cabin filter, but you know, if it's got one, I'm going to change it. Because the thing is, on cars like these, preventative maintenance is the best kind of maintenance. In its service history, less than 10 years ago, it had the entire cooling system rebuilt. It had all new hoses, new thermostat, brand new radiator, brand new expansion tanks and everything like that. All that stuff was done. It had the air conditioning system rebuilt as well, new hoses for that, the whole lot. I'm pretty sure it had brand new cooling fans as well, viscous fan coupler, things that, I mean, my goodness, this car has just had so much work done to it. Other than that, there are some things that do need to be done in the long term. The suspension needs a refresh. The shock absorbers and the springs, they're old Sportline stuff, and to be honest, they are quite warm. I probably need to refurb the steering box or some of the bits on the steering box. I need to get it up on a lift and have a look. I think there is a little bit of slop on some of like the idler arms and things like that, which is giving you a little bit of kind of mid-center play in the steering wheel. But to be honest, these cars kind of had that anyway, so that is what it is. There are a couple of little bits of rust bubbling in on the boot lid that need to be taken care of. And I just want to give this car a really, really good undersealing. Now we've gone through what it actually costs to own and run and repair, we have to ask the question, is it worth it? And do you know what? My goodness, this car is worth it. This car is just so special to me. Obviously, I have that connection to my dad, and we like to go out in the car together sometimes, which is nice because, you know, his Karat du Châtelet kitted Mercedes back in the day, as I said earlier, was the first car I ever drove, and it was one of my favourite cars that he's ever owned. The fact that this car was gifted to me by one of my best friends with the help of another one of my best friends who have just been so supportive of me and, you know, just wanted to see me do well and things like that with the YouTube channel and just in general. Is another reason why I love it and don't ever want to let it go. And it's also just the way this car makes you feel when you're going down the road. When you're driving a car like this, it's a special occasion. It's a special vehicle. There is just nothing else there like it. And every time I drive down the road and I look at that three-pointed star, I feel like I've made it. The people who've listened to the Radiator Arms podcast that myself, James and Ant did last year, which is on hiatus at the moment, by the way, for those who don't know. But the people who know me and have listened have known that I've suffered with mental health issues, physical health issues. And to be honest, it's March now, and this is the first car video I've filmed because I've been so unwell. And that isn't an asking for sympathy or woe is me thing. The point I'm trying to get at is when I get into this car, that just fades away. It all melts away. I just have this connection with this car that washes the pain away. Whatever issues I'm having, stress with work, stress with the fact I just moved in and purchased my first house. When you're in this car and you've got the music going and the weather has come up nice and you're cruising somewhere in comfort and you're so calm and you're chilled out, it just, none of that matters anymore. Don't get me wrong, I love my daily driver, which is my Dacia Spring, my little electric car. It gets me from point A to point B cheaply, and I actually have fun driving it. But every time I get out of that car and get into this, it just feels so special. And that's actually another reason why I wouldn't want to daily drive this car. I would never want to lose that feeling of getting into here, slapping myself and going, oh my God, this is my car. And I still do that. Every time I take this car out for a drive, I'm still in disbelief that I own this. Yes, it's not a high value car. You can get cars like this for anywhere between 5 and 10 grand, depending on condition, but it's not about the value. It's about the healing power of the automobile. So I want to say a big thank you to you for watching the video today. And if you like content like this and want to see more of this car and more of me fiddling on other vehicles as well, doing mechanical work, then hit that subscribe button, because all the work I'm going to do to this car this year, I'm going to be showing on camera. Anyway, with that aside, I'm going to cruise in my Mercedes now, and I will see you in the next video.